Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the All About Ability podcast. Great to be back. It's been a long week back in lockdown, and I'm really enjoying the podcast, keeping me busy over this period of time, but we keep going, don't we? So today we're joined with Martin Dougan, who currently works for BBC in the BBC News world, and we go through his kind of whole career and journey. And his time in basketball as the Scotland wheelchair basketball captain. So he played for many years at the top level, and since had moved into working for the BBC and doing amazing work. This podcast is sponsored by Kyle Financial, specialists in mortgages and protecting your family's finances. Whether you're looking for the best mortgage for you, or want to make sure you and your family aren't struggling if you are seriously ill or pass away, call Kyle Financial on 0141 447 0290 or email advice@kylefinancial.co.uk for more information. It was a real pleasure to talk to him. It took a while to get this one out. We've had it for a little bit, so some of the things about football related maybe a bit out of date when he talks about Celtic and Rangers, because that dynamic's changed a bit, I'd say. So yeah, it was a great episode, and I hope you all enjoy it.
Aye, so I've just basically caught the sun today. So look, I've went pink, so I'm working from home. That's it. So
you still get a bit of hair than me. That's why I'm hiding it.
Is that why you're hiding it? Alright, listen mate, I've got grey hair. Honestly, look at that. Like, 33 years old, got grey hair like an old man. I look like Benjamin Button.
It's coming from me, man. It's coming from me.
It's nice to speak to you, man. It's good to talk to you.
No, it's great to have you on, mate. I've heard a lot of good things about you, and the things the things you're doing right now are amazing. I don't know many people in wheelchairs working for the BBC and stuff like that. So you're making a difference out there, and It's definitely. I think it gives people a better idea of what they can actually go out and do, especially.
That's the thing actually with this sort of stuff. Like when you're, obviously we'll go into the athlete stuff later on, but the difficulty is, and you'll know yourself, being in the wheelchair and that, like as a disabled person in the world, it's pretty hard to aspire to be anything if you're not an athlete. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Every 4 years you see amazing people at the, in Rio and London, and Tokyo is going to come really soon, and that's going to be really exciting. But you see the people that are extraordinary, like Johnny Peacocks, your Davy Weirs in the past, and your wheelchair basketball players and your wheelchair rugby players, and you're going to get climbing now in the Paralympics, which is amazing, and paraclimbing.
Yeah. Right.
But the difficulty is that once you're finished with the sport, then everybody thinks that people in wheelchairs or disabled people aspire to be Paralympians, and that's not really the case. And I think for me, it's been a real journey. Actually, the journey I started after the 2012 Paralympics, obviously with Channel 4 presenting as part of their team because of my basketball past. But I think my real journey ended at the Paralympics, and the big journey started with BBC actually, because I've been privileged enough to be able to present Newsround, which was iconic. It still is, and it's becoming bigger now because people are relying on us to tell them the big facts of the world, like Black Lives Matter, Brexit, the lockdown situation with coronavirus. So, and that was a real privilege for me because I'm not seen. The BBC have never treated me like I'm someone that's in a wheelchair. They've treated me like a news journalist, really, and it's been amazing. And the reason why I do what I do is because I hope that maybe one day somebody who is able-bodied and somebody who's disabled gets inspired enough to think that they can do the job, and they'll be an athlete and they'll have to be extraordinary. You can just do a job where you tell people stories and you cover the news, and that, that's been, you say that it's really good about what I've achieved, but it's not a normal job, but it is a normal job in terms of what people expect for people that are disabled or whatever. And I think a lot of disabled people think, if I become a Paralympian, then I'll, that's my natural route. But you don't have to. You know, you can do anything that you want to do, whether you want to be working in an office in IT or whether you want to be working as a Paralympian. Do you know what I mean?
It's such an interesting point you say that, because I was recording the other day with a man called Mick Scarlett, and he has been working with disabled people for many years now. He's also in a wheelchair, and one of his biggest points that I really was kind of struck by was talking about how the Paralympics is like the only thing really that it's as if that's like the only target really out there. And he's discussed in terms of like journalism and creative side of things, like art and music and things like that.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with him. I don't disagree with what he says. I think it is a target, but it's an obvious target, isn't it? Because people are interested in sport and they want to become part of a team, or you want to be achieving things and you want to win medals for what you do. That's not a disabled person thing. That's just a I mean, I'm pretty sure people that don't like sport often think to themselves, "Oh, it'd be great if I had football skills." Do you know what I mean? To play football and whatever. Do you know? I don't know, but I don't think this is the issue that I've got with the whole. It's not an issue, actually. It's what I think about when it comes to being disabled. I think we've got to be careful about just thinking that the Paralympics is the only thing. And I think that, for me personally, that falls on us, the disabled person, to actually change that.
Yeah.
So for me, when someone says to me that's the only option, I feel is like, I need to be an athlete of some kind, you know, to achieve some kind of recognition and whatever it is that you're looking for, whether it's recognition or whether it's just because you enjoy the sport. Doesn't matter, but I feel like that's up to that. The stereotypes that we've got as disabled people, actually, I think for me falls a lot upon disabled people themselves. You know, and it's interesting because we've got a responsibility to break the mould. When we've done it in sport, everybody knows that. Everybody knows that we've done it in the 2012 Games. We were doing it long before that, like long before London came. But we've got socially, in terms of other things that we can do, whether it's journalism, whether you want to be a conservationist, whether you want to be something else, somebody's got to have to break the mould with that, and they're going to have to change the perception of themselves and think, oh, if I can't be an athlete, I can't do anything. You need to change that. You need to go for it.
Yeah.
And that's when the stereotypes get broken, innit? That's when it changes. Like, you're not just an athlete that appears on our telly, even though you're a full-time athlete, you appear on our tellies and we care every 4 years. But if you're somebody that does something every day, whether you're on screen or whether you're not, whether it's just a job that you enjoy, like, you're going to have to change that, actually, and you're going to have to work hard to make yourself good enough in order for people to be able to knock you back. And that's been my sort of my way of thinking for a long time. Like, outside of sport, that's where the real work happens when it comes to the Paralympic movement, and we need people that's willing to stand up and say it's not just about the sport, actually, it's actually about just being really good at what you want to do now. Like, and that's up to disabled people.
Yeah, definitely. I think you made a really good point, and that's something I've believed in, and why one of the biggest reasons why I've started the podcast, to be honest, was the feeling of this sort of, you know, I speak for sport in general because I'm very passionate about sport and that's what I'm into, but just in life in general, I feel like we don't really go for we're almost, for my experience, I found that I use the wheelchair as like a excuse not to do something.
But you've done that. I've done that before. I've done that before completely. Like, I've used the wheelchair to my advantage, don't get me wrong. I think in terms of, and I agree with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, of course, you know, everybody uses whatever advantage you can get in life. I think that's just what we're built, isn't it? Like, we'll use an asset that we've got in order to get what we need to get. But then again, when you use it to your advantage, if you use a disability, a wheelchair, I can only speak for people that are in my position, like yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of, I can't talk for the vast array of people that have got disabilities out there. Do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of, like, every disability is different. I can only talk for people that are in my position, like you can only talk for people that are in your position. But that's what I mean. If you're going to turn around and use it as an advantage and use it as an excuse, then don't complain.
Yeah.
When the pendulum swings the other way and people see you as someone who's no capable.
The way I like to put it is like, to change the perception of everyone else, we need to change the perception of ourselves first.
Yeah, do you know what? That epitomises everything that I've just said. I wish I'd just said that at the beginning, so I didn't need to talk for a minute and a half. But that's like that's basically what I'm trying to say, and I think that's the message, the clear message as to why I never got into sort of like being a disability advocate in terms of like trying to change perceptions of people's perceptions of disability, because I think a lot of the perceptions lie with us as well as in terms of disabled people. So we need, I can't fight against the world if the people that we're fighting for.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that was what was strange for me is I used to be one of those people. I used to be one of those people that was like, that had a really poor perception of myself in the chair. So therefore, I used it as a reason not to do it. Everyone already seen me as a failure, so I had no reason to try. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's what you used to think. You think that people see you as a failure then?
Yeah, because when I say failure, I mean like unable, just not going to be able to do whatever he wants to do, and it was a weird kind of like scenario of events that caused me to change my mindset and realise that I could do literally anything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But when you go from that person, when being able to change myself from that person to this person means that I now feel that I can help those people you've mentioned kind of change their mindset a wee bit and think about it differently. Yeah,
and I agree with that, because you're not ramming it down their throats. You're not get a specific point that you're trying to get at. You've not got you're just doing it for you as well. And I think that's the important thing to get out of it, is that you're actually you're taking a bit of initiative and you're doing something that you enjoy, which hopefully other people in part enjoy. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
That's the key, and that's been the thing with Newsround actually, is because the way that I looked at it is like, I think I was the first person in a wheelchair to present Newsround, and somebody asked me recently, like, how do you feel about that? I says, I feel, obviously it's nice to be part of history and stuff, like, it's nice, you know what I mean? It's not bad. But people are like, oh, do you worry about how people perceive you on telly and stuff? I says, no, because it's really simple. The way that it works is everybody gets judged, don't they? No matter whether you're in a wheelchair, no matter whether you're disabled or not, you get judged. So people at the beginning will say, oh, there's that guy in the wheelchair. There's a guy in the wheelchair on TV. And then eventually they go, oh, there's Martin.
Yeah.
It's about building that trust, that rapport. And it's not a disabled issue, that's an actual human issue. That's what we do all the time. Like, we do that, and that's what it's about recognising that and trying to, because I think we're getting into a really deep sort of disability chat here at the minute, but I think it's about people that are feeling a bit disgruntled about their situation, about being in the chair. It's about recognising that sometimes people don't act that way because you're disabled, or
it's because you're human and they're human. Yeah,
because it's a human thing.
Yeah,
that's what we do. We dodge it. So that's basically it. I feel as though I've become like I've maybe a really deep, dark chat about what I think about the disabled world.
I'm going to, because of the way we spoke about that there, and I very much agree with everything you said, but I do want to flip it onto the other side of that for anyone listening to it and thinking, well, this happened to me, that happened to me, and it's not. Yeah. I think it's fair to say that the world isn't designed for people with disabilities.
No, I think that's quite safe to say that, actually. I think as long as the world isn't built for us, in a sense, like, it's getting better. And I would agree with anybody, that has their daily struggles, whether it's getting to work, whether it's just getting milk or whatever. I agree with that. I agree with the daily struggles of people with that, but I think you've just got to adapt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Adapt, and it's hard, isn't it? Because that's what I was talking about, the spectrum of disabilities. Like, you can't talk for everybody. Like, I can only talk from my perspective. I'm not trying to put a blanket over the disability thinking. I'm just trying to talk.
The reason why I say that is because when you're talking about that, it comes across like a really strong mindset, and I have the same sort of mindset to it as well. But But it doesn't mean that those difficult, because when I didn't have that strong mindset, if I heard someone like yourself saying, well, you just got to adapt, you just got to be strong, you just got to go for it, my head would be like, my head would go, well, he doesn't quite understand what's fully going on in me. I was able to dismiss it. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose what you're asking me is that basically some people, what I've said is quite a vague thing for somebody, something that, well, I get that, and then fine. I think if somebody was annoyed about the fact that I said adapt, or
no, it's
no, but what I mean is it's not about being annoyed. It's about, right, if somebody did say that question, right, if I say to them adapt, right, and they'd be like, well, that doesn't really make sense to me actually, because that's not how I feel, right? I mean, I suppose it's a case of like asking yourself the question, right? So, like, what is it that you actually want to achieve? Like, it's about saying, if you don't like the fact that I've said adapt, what's the other option that you've got?
Yeah.
Right? What else are you going to do?
Wait for the whole world to change. It's not going to happen.
So what are you actually looking for? Are you looking for something to come your way, or are you going to go and get it? Or are you going to go and try and achieve that, no matter how big or small it is? Like, because again, we come back to that human element, but it's like, that's not a disability issue, actually, that's just an issue of life.
Yeah, exactly.
And if something, don't get me wrong, I've lived in London, I've lived in quite a few places, and I've struggled to get on the tube, and I've struggled to get downstairs, and I've struggled to do all that sort of stuff, and I'm really fortunate myself that I'm able to kind of like quickly get myself to places that's a challenge, and I know a lot of people aren't like that, and I know that there's a lot of things that other people are going through. But what I mean is that it is again, I'll always say that to everybody with any disability, is like it's up to yourself to kind of change something and make something work. Because if this world isn't adapted for us, we need to adapt for it in a sense, and we need to make it work, or else it's just going to be miserable in it. Like, let's be honest. Well, anyway, that was a really I'm going to have some more wine now. I'm not going to cry. But anyway.
No, I think it's a good point to make, and one of the things that kind of brings me back to is when I was in that kind of mindset of not, thinking the world was against me and I had all these problems, I couldn't tackle it. I think one of the most important things to stress here to everyone listening is that you can only focus on yourself. We need to stop comparing each other's struggles to everyone. Like,
I know, but that's the difficulty. That's what happens. Is that that's the main crux. You're totally right, actually, and I agree with what you're saying. And that's why you've started this podcast. Obviously, like everybody's different. Like, see, cerebral palsy, the disability I've got. Right, I'm 3 months premature. Cerebral palsy. I could walk really badly up until I was 13, and then I went into the chair. But everybody with cerebral palsy's got a different type of cerebral palsy. There's not two people in the world that are the same. Do you know what I mean? So when you talk about disability and generalise it like, oh, this is a discrimination against disabled, it actually isn't. It's discrimination against somebody that's got that particular disability, because there'll be somebody else with a disability that can do whatever that problem is for that person. So
exactly,
it's not always a disability issue. It's an individual thing, and you've got to try and challenge it if you're not happy, but also at the same time they're just going to have to put up with it. Like everybody else, you know what I mean? Like,
it's the thing of the way I like to think of it is any change that's ever been made, it's been by that specific group. And what I mean by that is racism was fought by black people. Gender equality was fought by women, and homophobia was fought by gay people. Like, so we, in terms of the stigma around disability, we have a responsibility as a collective group to change that perception and work it.
We do have a responsibility as a collective group, you're totally right, but we have a responsibility as a collective group to be honest with each other as well.
Yes, exactly.
And sort of have that honest chat with each other and say, it is up to us to, even though we feel as though we're challenging something all the time, we feel as though we're fighting against something, and we are, but everybody is. like you just mentioned there, there's women's groups, there's groups about racism, there's groups about all sorts of stuff. Like this isn't an individual thing for us. This isn't a special problem that disabled people only have. There's issues with everything, and I think that's probably what Newsround's taught me the most. Actually, is that I talk about the news every day, and I hear stories now. So maybe that's why I've got the perception that actually, if you want something bad enough, or if you want to achieve something bad enough, or if you want to campaign against something bad enough, or if you want to change something, you will. That's. But disability is a different thing, because, let's say, for example, when you're a woman, you're a woman. When you're a man, you're a man. Right? Every woman's different. Every man's different. But when it comes to disability, when you campaign, when you're an activist for disability, what disability are you acting for? Yeah. Because if you act for access to bars and clubs with, I don't know, bars and clubs. Let's just say, for example, you're being an activist to get transport better. Forget about the bars and clubs. If you want to make better transport, not only have you got to make it better for people that are in wheelchairs or people with mobility issues, you've got to make it better with people with sight loss, hearing issues, people that have got sensory issues, such a wide spectrum. Whereas if you're fighting for the rights of being a woman and being able to vote like the suffragettes did, then you're all in that fight together as a woman. But this time it's different. Like, you can't fight for someone that's got autism, or someone that's got, somebody that's got an amputee. I can't fight for somebody that's autistic, somebody that's an amputee, somebody that's blind, somebody that's deaf, because I've got no idea what the struggles are. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. And you talk about being honest with each other as well, and that's one of the things I found in sport, particularly, where there's this idea that you were just going to turn up and you were there for fun, and it wasn't, like there was a trophy and it was competitive, but nobody really spoke about the competitiveness of it, and it always bothered me. And as I got into fitness and stuff like that, that's what kind of made me go.
The thing that's always interested me about the power chair stuff, if you don't mind me asking, Kieran, right, is like, I'm going to ask you a question, I suppose, and it's going to bring us into something else, but what is the difference between, why would it matter, right? This is a tough question I'm going to ask you. So why does it matter to someone who's got a disability, in terms of like a quadriplegic disability? Why would it matter to you whether you're fit or not when you're sitting in a chair playing para football?
That is a good question, and I think the best way to answer that is to say that for me, from my experience, the difference was it's very fast at the top level. Power football it's just 100 mile an hour, fast, and you have to be on, and you only really get that kind of. You have like a millisecond to hit the ball the right way at the right spot. It has to be done in a way that it's all about timing and getting the right bit at the right time, and so to do that, you have to have your mind switched on, and your mind isn't going to be switched on if your body's not switched on. Is the best way.
Aye. Well, I suppose I'll give you an analogy that I was talking about the same sort of issue. I'm a Rangers fan, right? And I'm going to talk about a SFA issue here. In terms of the leagues, in terms of Rangers. Morelos for me this season is exactly what you've been describing. So people are saying to me, Rangers need to sell Morelos, right? And you go, what? And they say, especially down here in England, they're like, what's this guy Morelos? What's the big deal? Mm-hmm. And you think Morelos last year was fit and he was sharp and he was looking good. Now, I'll give you two separate players. If you look at Thierry Henry, right? Thierry Henry it didn't matter how fit or how much he wasn't in the mood. He was a striker that would place the ball where he wanted. He would side foot it, right? So he gave him a yard, half a yard. He would slot it around the goalkeeper with that side foot shot. That's what he was famous for. That side foot, curl it with the goalie, put it in the corner. Whereas Morelos, if you speak about Morelos before Christmas last season, he was fit, he was healthy, he was banging them in. After Christmas, he couldn't score for toffee, right? Mm-hmm. So the reason for that is because Morelos decided that he didn't need to be fit, right? And he decided that he needed to eat more chicken and no go to the gym, right? But the problem is with Morelos' game is he's an instinctive striker, so he's not somebody that's going to curl the ball, run the goalie with a side foot. He's going to put his laces through it. He's going to get that half a yard and he's going to bang it in. That's what Morelos' game is. Pure instinctive, great striker, but only when he's fit. If he puts a couple of pounds on, you're going to see it, and defenders are going to love it, right? And I suppose that's what you're talking about, is having that mental, physical edge where you've got to play.
You have to have that kind of, to have that instinct. You have to be alert. You have to be up for it. You have to be energetic, and you just don't have it for whatever reason. Your brain just doesn't have that instinct that you're talking about. For that half a yard, for that wee bit of space, when he finds the pocket,
but that's what you're talking about, innit? Like if you're working out and you go to the gym, you're gaining that extra edge mentally because your mind's clear, your body's feeling good. You're giving yourself as much of an edge as you can.
Exactly. Well, I seen, the direct result of that, which was a couple of years ago. My team played. We were second, again to Tayside Dynamos, and it was very frustrating to just keep being second and keep being. But there was an element in my game that I knew that I was able to do more. That I wasn't really, because the thing is, especially with cerebral palsy, this is important, right? Because cerebral palsy, I think, it does have an effect on you, but it does have an effect on your thought process.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Even with things like speech and just how you think about things, and so being kind of overweight and not being physically active while having cerebral palsy, you're going to be slow as ever.
Big time. And I think it takes you, obviously, what I found when I played basketball when I was at, do you know what, like, I played for a great club. I really did. But I'll go into that in a minute. But I think the cerebral palsy is really difficult because the way that I describe my cerebral palsy to somebody is that it's frustrating in the sense that when you watch something, right? Mm-hmm. I can't give you an example. Let me give you an example for like a basketballing point of view, right? Let's if you imagine Michael Jordan taking a jump shot, which is when he's like 7 yards away from the basket, and he takes a shot and he jumps up and he does that elephant thing that he does when he shoots it, and it's in, or if he does a slam dunk that he does with his tongue out, right?
Yeah.
And we'll give in terms of being somebody with cerebral palsy, right? I remember for years. And I used to score baskets. I used to be able to play games competitively at a high level. And I knew that. But I remember one day my coach saying to me, I'm going to film you. Take so many shots. I says, right, okay. He says, but I want you to take this one particular shot, which was me on the free throw line, which is like a penalty for basketball in terms of football. You stand at the free throw line, you take shots. And the way that the action is supposed to work, right? So let's see if this works. So the way the action works is you've got the ball in your hands, you grab it, you extend, you guide with this hand if you're right-handed, and you throw up with the right. Right? Dead simple. Right? You watch it, you see it, you're actually playing for a team, you're competing. Mm-hmm. Right? I remember he filmed me, and I remember going back to the video, and my shot looked nothing, absolutely nothing, like what I had in my head. It came out like this. Like something else, and for the whole time I've been playing basketball for years at this point, and I could not believe how my brain visualised like because in my brain I knew how to take the shot.
Yes, your body's slower.
But physically between the brain and then the messages between the brain and my hands or whatever. Between taking that shot,
Mate,
They never,
I can
they
relate
never,
so much. I can relate so much to that.
and
Because
that was like a real like wake up moment for me. That was like that's when I realised it. And then with cerebral palsy, it's like because you've got the brain obviously affects certain muscles in different ways. So for me, like my hands aren't as affected as a lot of people. Like I've got fine coordination, I can catch anything, but I'm lucky that way. I can throw a ball up at least and whatever. But in terms of, it's almost like for me, the brain and the body is connected, but it kind of plays tricks on me a wee bit. Where it's like,
yes.
You know how. Let's put it this way: it's like having a brain where you know how to play at a certain standards, but the body will just always say no.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And you don't see a lot of people with cerebral palsy playing for Great Britain at the basketball. Very few numbers. And that's the reason why, because we've got a very different concept about how we look in terms of doing things physically, actively, and then how it kind of turns out. That's how I feel.
It's really cool for me actually, because I've never heard anyone put it the same way I feel about it in terms of how you describe the effect of cerebral palsy in performance and how like it does have that effect. Because like you say, I've missed shots in powership football where I've been like, I've scored that so many times. How, like, what happened there? Where did they go?
Yeah.
So,
and it's nuts because I think cerebral palsy is a hilarious disability, to be honest. Like, because we get slagged off for so many stuff, like in my disabled peers, like, you know, like my hands are wild. Like I've got these long fingers, but like my thumb bends, and people put that down to cerebral palsy. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you know what? You can't blame them. So, but there's whenever I used to play in a team, cerebral palsy would be the topic of discussion sometimes, like in terms of having a laugh about it, like because everybody knows that you've got the brain to be able to do it, but the body does the work, but they don't see what you're thinking in your head, so they just see this cerebral palsy mess.
Yes.
Like,
see, when you're talking about that, it makes me want to stress something, because there's people that come on my mind when you talk about it. Like you're talking about how there's not that many people with cerebral palsy in the basketball squad. Yeah. See in the powership football, there's not many people with cerebral palsy in that either. It's mostly muscular dystrophy and Duchenne's and things like that. And there's what my workouts and the way I work out and stuff and prepare for games is it's always like really high intensity. Because I find that the harder I go, the calmer I feel after it, and the more I'm able to sort of be like control anxiety in that moment and be able to take the opportunity.
Is that just before a game you're talking about then? So like in the warm up stuff like that? Like,
so like I'm talking about like see the way my mind works and the way I know I work. If I don't start training for something like 6 weeks before it, if I get like 2 weeks before an event and I'm a bit overweight and a bit sluggish and a bit not in the routine, I know that it's not going to go that well. So I've already in my head I've already won or lost by the time I'm driving to the event.
Oh right, serious? Oh no, man, like that's an interesting one. When I used to train, I played for the Wolverine Phoenix Wheelchair Basketball Club, which was honestly it's so close to me now still. Like I don't know if you've heard of them before, but
I've heard the name.
So basically, it started off because we played for the West of Scotland, which are called the Rocks now. I think they're called the Glasgow Rocks or something. I can't remember. But I played for them and I was really young at the time. And there was a guy called Stevie Duff who used to be an able-bodied basketball player from Edinburgh. He played at a good level college in America and stuff like that when he was younger. But he started playing wheelchair basketball because he got a knee injury or something like that. I can't quite remember what the details were. But there was a whole squad. There was like 7 young players within the Glasgow team. And we weren't getting played, basically, because we were in the development stages. But Stevie came up with an idea that he wanted to make a team in Edinburgh called the Wolverine Phoenix, and he took 7 of us to this club, we all kind of took the risk and we thought, we're going to get game time. Yeah, we're going to get game time. I think the Glasgow team were in the first division at the time, and we were obviously a non-existent team, so we had to build ourselves up. And what you're saying, like, was interesting about how you've already made up your mind about, yeah, you know, because I'd already made up my mind whether I was going. I just wanted to play basketball. I just wanted to play basketball.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do was play. I remember going, and there was only 7 of us, and we managed to get ourselves promoted to the top leagues, and we won the Scottish Cup. We overtook, you know, the Glasgow team for a wee while.
Yeah.
In terms of
amazing.
We played at a really high level. I mean, I went to GB trials, Captain Scotland, all that sort of stuff. I got paid to play basketball for a little while. It was a good time. But I think it's interesting what you say there about mentality and you know, in terms of you've already made up your mind whether you're going to win, whether you're going to beat this team or not, or whether you're going to have a good game or whatever. But I used to have these weird superstitions, you know what I mean? Like when I used to play sport, like, you know, I'd have the same kind of rest routine the night before, I'd go to my bed the night before, but never in my life, with that team that we had, never in my life did I think that we couldn't win a basketball game. Never, ever did it. But I used to do things, you know, I understood what you said about getting tore in at the beginning, which kind of like sets the tone for you.
Yeah.
Right? I remember when it came to wheelchair basketball for me at that level, I think when it comes to para-sport for me, when teams para-sport, like your rugby, your basketball, like, you know, what the sort of the squad thing, you know, where it's a bit physical. People used to always ask me, well, what's the difference between being someone that plays at a low level, not low level, but somebody that plays at a level which is intermediate, and somebody that plays at a professional level, and someone that plays at a standard which is deemed to be all right. And I always said, chair control and contact is like the main thing. If you've got fundamental skills as a footballer, right, as a power chair footballer, you're always going to have the fundamental skills, you just need to build on them, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? That's a separate thing. But the thing for me was always chair control. That's what always changed it, because you could make contact with somebody.
Yeah.
But illegal contact, do you know what I mean? With it, chair to chair. If you just bash into somebody like bang, it's a foul. Do you know what I mean? Like any sport, if you just want to take someone out, take them out. But if you take someone out and you make a right turn with your chair and you move the ball in a certain way or whatever, it doesn't look like you're...
Yeah. It's a
no foul. It's controlled aggression, I suppose I would put it. Yeah. So that was always the difference with me. And whenever we used to do warm-ups at the Lothian Phoenix, my coach would always encourage us, you know, this is before a game, he'd be like, hit your boy, hit him, you know, bang in.
Yeah, get into it.
And then see when we go to the actual game, whenever somebody made contact with us, it didn't feel as hard. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, that was kind of our way of, like you said, you would G yourself up. In terms of like, I'm going to get myself in there, I'm going to hit somebody, I'm going to hit something, I'm going to bash, I'm going to score goals. That's what I want. You know, my target is to get 15 goals in this season or whatever. You know what I'm going to do, whatever it is. But I always thought that the difference, the main thing when it came to wheelchairs, team sports, was always how hard you can get hit and make contact without it being a foul. Do you know what I mean? Like, because if you can play basketball, you can play basketball. If you can play football, you can play football. If you can play rugby, you can play rugby. You know that. Your manager's there to teach you. Your coach is there to teach you how to improve your skills.
Yeah.
But in terms of your chair control, somebody can't teach you. You can only teach yourself chair control. Like, that's
true.
So that was the main thing that I thought. That's what makes a really, really good para-athlete in terms of team sports, like Patrick Anderson that plays wheelchair basketball, like your right backs that plays wheelchair rugby. Do you know what I mean? Like, these boys have got really, really... But it's not a coincidence that both of them are amputees. You know what I mean? Like, they've got a low centre of gravity, they're fast, they can move. Like, that's the way it works.
Well, for me, it's exactly... You're always going to have that foundation, like you say, you're spot on. and then it's like, what are you going to do? Because in these kind of games like wheelchair basketball and wheelchair football, you have to be on all the time. There's no time to be off, and so it's not enough to just be on when you have the ball. You have to be able, where, you know, your awareness of where you're going. You have to always be on, because the ball could follow you anytime. And that was something that I was always terrible at. When I say that I knew whether we were going to lose, it's because, not because I didn't have faith in the team to win, because I thought we were always a good team and we always had a chance to win. I just knew whether or not we were going to win. Like, if I was going to a game and I wasn't in good shape and I wasn't feeling great and I was in a bad place, I knew we weren't going to win because of me. Do you know what I mean?
But that's something that you do as an individual anyway. Like, you always pick on your own game. But I think the thing that I always took away for the Phoenix, and when I started at the Glasgow team, you know, there's a method to playing powerchair football. There is. Yeah. There's like, you know, there's certain skills that people have individually. Do you know what I mean? But there's a method to winning the tough games, and it's understanding a lot of different things, whether it's the psychology of the moment when you go at that, right, how are we going to G the team up, whether it's the tactics that the team deploy, whether it's, do you know what I mean? There's so many different things, but I think that the thing that I'm really grateful for is that the thing that Coach Stevie Duff always taught us was like, we understood how to play wheelchair basketball. Like, we understood the game. We understood wheelchair basketball, how the pick and rolls, the 2-man versus 1, the numerical advantages, the dead simple things that somebody who maybe isn't very good at basketball talent-wise in terms of, but they've got the fundamentals to be able to pick somebody off and allow a 2-on-1 situation to go, how the court works, why we're moving that way, why we're having these tactics, why we're doing this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understood how to play. I understood wheelchair basketball at the level which I required to be able to do my job on the court. And there's so many people that play sport that don't understand why they're doing it. Like, you will never understand. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I would say to them. Like, okay, you might be a better player than me, but you don't understand this game.
Yes, like, exactly.
And it's like that. That's really important. Like, you've never learned how to play wheelchair basketball. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're a talented, you can score 25 points if you want. Do you know what I mean? But you could be a lot better if you decided. And I think that comes back to your situation, where it's just like, you know, like in a lot of sport things, it's acknowledging that you know exactly why you're doing something. Like, why am I getting up in the morning when I'm not quite fit enough, when I'm not feeling it? And you go, I'm doing it because this is my role, in a sense. Yeah. This is what I'm here to do.
Exactly. I mean, because I went from like winning nothing to win. I won like 2. I remember the first year that I won Player of the Year. I had given up on it. I was like, I'm never going to win that ever. It's not going to happen, because I had this thing in my head that I was never going to be seen as that guy, kind of thing.
You never thought you were going to achieve.
I genuinely thought I was just trying to make up the numbers. So, but when I think about what was different from that season and those seasons now compared to the years before that, and it was, you know, putting in those extra hours, putting in that extra time, but also the thing is, we talked about honesty with each other before.
Yeah,
I think that there's this thing I've noticed of people not really being honest with their own weaknesses and saying and egos get in the way sometimes, even in disability sport, where you're like, they don't want to acknowledge these things. I was very harsh on myself with what I wasn't doing, which is what if you're listening to this and you want to improve your sport, you need to be really honest with yourself as to what's not going on here, because
if you've got to think about, you know, whether it's good for the team. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes people don't enjoy their role. Sometimes you're never going to be that guy that's going to score 5 goals or 10 goals or 10 points in a basketball game or whatever, but you're detrimental in terms of making the numerical advantage for that team, or you'll make some picks, or you'll be that guy who does the dog's work. Do you know what I mean? And people want the glory as well. They go, oh, I want to be that guy. Everybody has the ambition to be the Ronaldos or the Messis, do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of banging in the goals, but I think that's why learning the actual craft of the sport really changed me and really helped my game. Like, because it's like, actually, every role's important. Even if you're sitting on the bench, you've got to G your team up and you've got to make sure that you're watching the game, engaging in it, so that when the coach turns in and says to you, right, you're up, you know, like, actually, what am I here to deliver? I'm engaged with the game. I know how that player works that's opposite me. You know, everybody's important to a squad. And, like, I was the same as you. I was always bothered about sometimes I sat on the bench, which I did for a long time. I used to always get annoyed and I used to always try and compete with the person that was at my opposite number. But, you know, it took me a while to get there.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where before you go onto any court and before you play in any standard, whether it's the lowest division in the league, whether you're just starting out, whether you're grassroots, whether you're young, whether you're older, I would say like the best way to appreciate team para sports is to get physical with it, enjoy it, have fun, but then also try and understand how the game works, because then you realise how you fit into that, because it's not the same as football. Power chair football isn't the same as football. Wheelchair basketball isn't the same as basketball. The rules are the same. Everything kind of works the same way, but it isn't the same. You have to like work to that.
Yeah, if you're just in the mindset of wheelchair basketball and basketball are the same, then you're going to miss the wee things that give you half a yard.
Well, it's just like, let's be honest about it. Like in basketball, like everybody basketball, I think you've got less time. You would have less time on the ball, for example. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of taking a shot, you've got a guard in the front of your chair, and that person's got a guard, so you get 2 yards. Basically, I think in my head, you've got that space to take a shot. Timings are different. You're sitting down. The way that you take shots are different. The way that we work the tactics is different. It's the same sport, it is, but how we operate within that sport is different, and it's the same football.
And having the full understanding of that is what's going to make you able to perform at the top level. You mentioned like Morelos earlier, and I just talked about this. You're probably going to hate this example, but I feel like Scott Brown's a good example of this, where the Celtic midfield have a lot of good midfielders these days, where it's like very technical and very good. But Scott Brown's always one of the first names in the team sheet.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I think it's because, maybe players like Ncham and McGregor Christie are really technically better, but Brown offers that sort of understanding of the other side of the game that's needed for, you know, if you take to this day, if you take Scott Brown at the Celtic team, when you can see it, we're still missing somebody. I know there's probably Celtic fans that disagree with that, but
Scott Brown is Celtic now, isn't he? Like if I think about Celtic on the park, first player that comes to my mind is Scott Brown. Scott Brown is Celtic, do you know what I mean? And he understands, but he's just experienced. He's played at that high level with Celtic for a long time, and you're right. But there's a few reasons for that. I think there's experience, and then there's leadership. He knows where he needs to be at the right time. Maybe he's not got the legs. I've been looking at Scott Brown this season, and let's be honest, he's not as good as what he used to be. Like, we can all see that. There's a yard or two, or maybe it's just a bit of boredom. I don't know, but he's definitely lost aspects of his game this season. You can see that. But back to that example, he's just somebody who knows, his job. He knows how to do it. And he operates very well. And
then also how to win games and how to if you've got a few minutes to go in a game and you're winning, taking a shot from 25 years out probably isn't the best idea. You know, take the guy out if he's breaking away, take him out.
Oh, he will.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's a part of football. That's like it's
a part of
any sport. Like having that sort of full understanding of how you can get that edge on the other team, And you reached the kind of what I would call the pinnacle of anyone's ambition to be the captain of the Scotland team. Any Scottish wheelchair basketball players going to want to be going to want to get to that, aspire for that.
It was nice. It was good. I mean, I think that reaching that was lucky because Stevie Duff, the guy that I was telling you about, he was the coach of Scotland basically. So he obviously understood his players really well. But he obviously had the opportunity to work with other players that he'd never coached, or other players that he coached when he was at Scotland. But he chose me as his captain for a wee while, and that was great. Because we had some players from England whose mums and who we played against for other clubs when we were playing in England, whose parents or grandparents were Scottish and they chose to play for Scotland.
Oh, really?
And it's not the same as they could still play for Great Britain. It wasn't like once they get a cap for Scotland, it would be that you couldn't play for Great Britain or England or whatever, of course. But it was really nice actually because it was like there's a bunch of players that came in. But being captain of Scotland was definitely, in terms of basketball, I'd obviously done some camps with Great Britain. I'd done the Great Britain camps where I was good enough to come and train, and I was good enough to be in the pool of players that were considered to play for Great Britain at a certain time. But I think for me, definitely was the pinnacle of mine was being captain of Scotland, because that was just great, putting that jersey on and stuff, and like leading the team out in terms of playing against other things in it. Definitely, it's always, I remember it like it was yesterday. Like when I went out and led at Scotland, I genuinely do. I remember every single. Not in terms of playing games. I don't remember the games so much, like in terms of what we did, because you make tens and thousands of decisions during the game. You don't. But I remember lifting the cup for Scotland and all that sort of stuff. Like when we won the Nations League and stuff like that, we had like Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, England, Scotland. We used to play like a Six Nations sort of thing, like. And that was really good, like you'd be able to compete with your pals as well, because a lot of the boys that we played against in the season were Irish or English or Welsh. And it would add a different sort of feeling to it. You'd be like, oh, well, this is different, this is a big deal. Everybody wanted to win it, do you know what I mean? So we were able to lift the cup that year, like into, I can't remember what it was, I think it was 2012 or 2013 was when we lifted the cup. And whatever, and that was pretty special, to be honest. I think out of a lot of things, your family members, maybe don't come and watch you to play every club game, but my family were there at the time when I played for Scotland, because it was a Scotland thing and I was captain. So it was a pretty special time for me, to be fair, and it's something that I'll always I remember when Stevie asked me to be the captain, because I wasn't the captain of the Phoenix team, definitely not. Mm-hmm. I was one of the senior members, for sure. But I never ever thought that I was going to get asked. So when I was quite surprised, and we did all right. We won the cup.
Did you feel it was something that you were capable of in the attitude, or was there any hesitation?
No, I never had any element of doubt, Kieran, to be honest. Like, that was part of it was one of the things that people liked, it was one of the things that people hated. Like, there was never any self-doubt in me, do you know what I mean, in terms of being able to tell people what the instructions were with Stevie, because Stevie had a very specific way of playing, and I think that's why he chose me to be his captain, because he understood that I understood him. Yeah. So when all the other players came from different teams and they worked in different settings and they had a different tactic or they had a different role, Stevie saw things a little bit differently, so he knew. I never had a problem with communicating what I thought to my fellow players. I never had a problem communicating what I saw. So Stevie obviously recognised, Martin will be able to get my thoughts on court.
Yeah.
Kind of get them. And that was it. I was really lucky to be able to do that. Real privilege, actually, really was.
It's quite cool to hear you talk about it, because I actually recently had this similar sort of privilege in back February. I got the armband for when we went to Leeds to play friendlies against English clubs.
Right, okay.
we brought down 2 teams. So I was the captain of one of the Scotland teams, and we managed to finish second in that tournament, which is what our aim was, because English teams are a bit far ahead of us now, and we're still working on that.
I know. I've been speaking about. I know the deal with that. But you've been given the captaincy for your.
Well, not entirely, because I can't discard the other team and Colin, who was the captain of Colin Shields, who was the captain of the other Scotland team at that time. But after how well we played and how well the team took to me having it, I was feeling pretty confident about. We had games scheduled for May with Ireland, full international, and I had that. It was funny because I actually wrote down when I was like 7 or something that I wanted to be captain of the Scotland team in football. So it was really quite a surreal thing. And then as soon as I got it, my intention for this year was going to be nobody's taking that off me. But unfortunately, that those games had to be cancelled because of the virus and things. So again, me and Colin are the 2 senior guys. So I can't say it's just me, because it's not just me. But
you work hard as well. Usually there is 2 senior guys in a club though, in it, like Lampards and your Terrys, and you know what I mean, like your Gerrard and your Carragers. There's always 2 people that are.
And do you know what was strange? I don't know if this was the same for you, because it felt like this for me. It felt like it made me play better.
Well, I'm glad it did for you, to be honest. I'm glad. I don't know if it made me play better or any worse. I've no See, I never really judged it on that, to be honest. I never ever judged my games on my responsibilities as a captain or whatever, because the guys that I played with were just my mates as well, but I loved them, and I still do. We're still very close, in my mind. We are, so I never really changed anything. Nothing changed. I was just there to play the sport. And I think what it did was is that what did the captaincy add for me? I suppose what is like the point. I don't know, man. Just a bit of pride, I suppose, and just like I don't know, like in terms of playing the game, it never added anything because it just became another formality. I felt responsibility sort of outside of the court. Like in terms of like to take care of the boys and the girls that were playing, and do you know what I mean? And to make sure that they were all comfortable, and sort of because Stevie was obviously dealing with his tactics on court and whatever he was going to do in rotating, and it was kind of, I felt like it was my job to take care of the squad when we were on the training or on the playing, in terms of well-being, and everybody's ready to put it in. So I suppose like off court, I felt more responsibility in terms of being a captain and getting everybody together. And making sure that we had a good ethos in order so when it came to doing what Stevie wanted to do, we were all kind of on the same page. We're all, we felt like we would fight for each other. Was always my thing as a captain. I feel like I felt as a captain it was never obviously my job to tell somebody how to play basketball themselves. If you play for Scotland, you're a good basketball player. I don't need to tell anybody how to play basketball when they play for Scotland. I don't need to do that. I suppose it was my job just to make people feel good about the fact that they're playing for Scotland and felt like they were secure. Like that was my thought process.
You were. It's like the way you're describing it is like you were there to make sure that you were together as a group and you were all kind of working towards the same thing. I
was there for togetherness. I was there to facilitate the team. In a sense, like be a really open book in terms of if any of the squad players wanted to talk to me about something that was bothering them, or whether they wanted to ask me a few questions about anything to do with the team or the rotation or the tactics or even just in life, if they wanted to just talk to me about anything. Basically, I see my role as facilitating them on court to make all of us feel as though we're part of a team, and also it was my job to facilitate what Stevie wanted to implement within the squads. So in terms of the basketball thing, that was Stevie's job to get that message across. It was my job to make sure that everybody was comfortable in doing it.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it.
So that we were on court so that I was the direct link. Because Stevie, great coach, one of the best coaches I've ever worked with. Best. I've not worked with many coaches, but I'm glad that I worked with Stevie. But it was, I'm the link between the squad and the coach, is what I saw. So because I'd worked with Stevie for so long, they knew that I could speak to him if something was struggling, whereas other players had just, didn't know him as well. So if he had a problem, they'd be like, "Oh, Martin, what do you think of this?" And I would go and speak to Stevie or whatever, and I'd speak to him about it, and usually it'd be all right.
I think the thing about being like captain as well is that you're like that whether you've got the armband or not. You're already naturally a leader or you're not. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like. And so for me, when I mentioned how it made me play a bit, what I mean by that is that my preparation was the same. I was still putting in the same effort. Nothing changed in terms of how much effort I was putting towards it, but it was just more so that when I actually got something that I felt as though I was never going to get. Because I knew going into that I hadn't had it before and the other person had had it before. So I knew as soon as I got the chance there was going to be a moment in that game I had to show that. And there was in that tournament in the last game, the second last game before the chairs went out, we were playing against the other Scotland team. And we prepared and basically there's four a side and there's eight of us, but two of us are getting cut to the Ireland squad. And we were losing the game 2-1 it was 2-1 at half time.
Yeah.
And part of me just doesn't know. Can't even fully describe what happened to me, but I just was like, I just knew exactly what to do and how to do it and how we weren't going to lose that game. We drew 2 each, and I scored with about a minute to go to equalise.
Good moment.
It was unbelievable. See, as soon as I scored that, I was like, this is the question I wanted to move on to. Was as soon as I had that feeling, I was like, I thought, I never will let this go. I want to keep this for as long as I can.
I've got to keep that captaincy, that responsibility.
So
I suppose you never want to leave it. Yeah.
How difficult was that to move on from that until I got to say this chapter of my life is over now?
Yeah, the basketball thing wasn't so difficult actually. It was my time to go. I knew that I'd done everything I was going to ever do in terms of ambition and whatever. I was really comfortable with it, and I just felt as if other things were on the horizon in a sense. Yeah. I knew that I had something else to offer. I knew that I wasn't good enough to make it as an actual career in basketball, and I was okay with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was fine with the fact that I'd achieved what I'd achieved. I had won medals, I had won playoffs, I'd got us promoted. Not me, the team did, but I was part of the teams that got promoted and were considered to be a really formidable force, like, for a long time. And that, for me, if you can play at that level, and everybody's always striving to play like Ronaldo or Messi or LeBron James or Michael Jordan, but in a normal sense, like, these guys are superhumans, like, they are. And, like, if you can play at a level where you get challenged all the time, where every game's a challenge, and every game, like, you feel like this team can beat me, and every team, if you're part of a team where you're feared, you know what I mean? Like, that's like the best feeling for me. And like, irrespective of the Scottish stuff, like, at club level, like, I knew we could travel up and down England and teams thought that we were going to beat them. And, like, when that started off with 7 players that get taken for a club who never played, and then it built up, for me, leaving that club, it was hard, obviously, because you want to, like, stay because of the mates aspect to it, because you want to stay with the boys that you spend all your time with, travelling up and down the country playing the sport that you love and having a good laugh and winning games. Well, that's just a thing, but it was my time to leave, and it was my time to go and try something else. And you know what? I don't regret a single second of leaving when I did, and I don't regret anything that I did in basketball. In fact, it's an absolute privilege to have been, part of wheelchair basketball as a whole. It shaped the sort of person that I am. It shaped I met some of my best pals. I became the person that I was supposed to be. And that's all because of basketball gave me the discipline that I needed to succeed in life, in terms of somebody that's in a wheelchair with cerebral palsy and having to get the tools to go forward and try different challenges. I'll never regret anything that I did in that game.
So what made you decide I'm going to move into this different field here and go into journalism and reporting?
I was just really lucky. Channel 4 launched a competition, basically asking for people to put in their applications to be the next Paralympic presenter, and I did it. And there was a few thousand applied, and then there was 8 of us left towards the end at the games, and that was it. Me and Alex Brooker, and Alex Brooker that does the last leg now. We were part of that team. Adi Adepitan, who plays wheelchair basketball, he never applied for it, he got it, but he was part of that team. It was a real privilege to be part of it. So I took a risk, thought, why not? I did it, and the rest is history, really.
It's an amazing story, really, how you were able to transition, because like you said, you always hear those stories of those kind of, I use MMA fighters and boxers as an example of, they always go back. They're always chasing that, adrenaline rush of the fight or the sport and the so it's to sit back and say I've accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish here, and then go and do something bigger than that almost is
well, that's it. That's exactly my point. Like, I never knew that it was going to take me to something bigger. I just knew that it was something that I would like to try out, and I knew that I had the expertise when it came to Paralympic sport, and I knew that I played sport before. So it was never something that I really ever thought or considered was for me, in terms of before that happened. So, and I've just been really lucky, to be honest. I've been incredibly lucky, because the Paralympics was obviously a life-changing time for everybody, for a lot of people. Changed a lot of things, and we were obviously a hot topic when it had finished. Like, we need to change the way we are, and whatever. Like, that's what the world was saying. We need to change our perceptions towards people with disabilities, and we were part of that. So that was quite good. That was quite special.
You helped move that needle kind of thing. You helped kind of start the process.
My job at the Paralympics was quite small. I was part of the minority sports team, so it was like table tennis, sitting volleyball, boccia, the weightlifting, like powerlifting, that sort of thing, and it didn't get a lot of coverage from my point of view, but in the build up to it, we all helped out in terms of how Channel 4 should navigate, in terms of how they describe disability and how they get profiles up there and stuff. So I feel, it's a small contribution, but it was just, I feel like 2012 was the time that tilted everything and changed a lot of things in terms of how disabled people are perceived, not just from a sporting point of view, but it kind of opened the world's eyes to how amazing the Paralympic Games are and what it brings, and the amazing people that perform in it.
Definitely.
So to be a part of that, it was amazing. I can always remember, one of the stories that sort of cropped up was I was on a train in London during the games, and I can remember sitting on I think it was a TLR line or something. I can't remember what line it is in London, and I was going from one building to another, and this little boy who was able-bodied says to his mate, "Have you been watching the Paralympics?" And his mate was like, "Yeah." And he's going, "Oh, have you seen that guy, Richard Whitehead? They call him the marathon runner or something?" And I'm sitting behind these kids, and I remember the kid imitating Richard Whitehead's run. I remember thinking, because obviously when you're in the middle of it, when you're in the thick of it, you don't see what the outside world are seeing. You just do your job and you just go to bed and you crack on. But watching that little boy doing that run was the first time I'd ever seen any young kids imitate a Paralympic athlete in my life. And that's when I kind of realised that, I think it was 10 days in, and I was like, wow, man, what we're doing here is, that one little boy doing that.
That's a really amazing story, mate. Like, honestly,
Incredible. It was unbelievable. Like, I remember it. Great day.
What's been some of your kind of favourite things to cover now that you're in the newsroom? Are you doing this work?
The kids stuff. I've covered the Paralympic Games in Rio. I covered the Commonwealth Games in Australia. I think my favourite thing mostly was to do with sport, because that's my background and I get to travel across the world to do it. But obviously recently I was in Fiji covering the low-lying islands in the South Pacific getting submerged underwater because of climate change. So we covered that story, and that's been really like such an eye-opener for me, like being able to travel across the world and cover stories that kids care about. And I think that for me, Newsround is such an amazing platform because we describe news to an audience that doesn't get spoken to normally. We're the only service in the country that speaks to young people directly about the issues that are happening in the world. But then also it challenges me every day about, if you hear about Black Lives Matter, about Brexit, about politics, about anything, about coronavirus, it's our responsibility to make it, engaging and understandable for audience of 6 to 14-year-olds or whatever. Not just audiences of that, to make it understandable for parents that need to tell their kids about what they think about things. It's understandable for fellow journalists, teachers. So I wake up every day feeling as though what I'm doing sort of matters in a sense and it helps others. And it's a real privilege. Obviously, I get the perks of being able to travel across the world and be able to meet some amazing people, but that is why we do what we do.
Definitely, mate. I think that's a really fitting point to finish on, to be honest. It's the way you put that there before you get too drunk.
Right. I'm not going too far. Thank you. Cheers, mate. It was really nice to talk to you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you, social media-wise?
So on Twitter, it is Martin Dougan 2012. And on Instagram, it's Martin Dougan 11. It's our numbers. So that's it.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
A reminder, this podcast is sponsored by Kyle Financial, who are currently offering free wills for everyone, even if you're not a client. Don't be in the 60% of adults that are will. Call Kyle Financial on 0141 447 0290 or email advice@kylefinancial.co.uk for more information. I hope you all enjoyed that episode. Next week we'll be joined by personal trainer and coach Caroline Milne. She does great work and I've been really enjoying getting to know her. I think it will be a really informative and fun conversation, so stay tuned for that, and I hope you all have a good week. Thanks for listening.